Hello everybody, my name is RawVox, and I'm a Sienna main, and this is my guide to Sienna Fueganazas. There are three classes to each character. For Sienna, that is the Battle Wizard, the Pyromancer, and the Unchained. I recommend going with the Pyromancer because of this increased critical chance base on overcharge level, and especially the Burning Head, which is a fireball that you can shoot out quite often. Whatever you're going to choose is going to work best for your playstyle. My talents, and my build entirely, is revolving around casting as much as possible and using my Burning Head as often as possible. Therefore, everything that I have focused on is going to be overheat reduction and cooldown reduction and temporary health gain. So, let me show you what I've done here. We've chosen the reduce overcharge by 10% so that we can cast more often. These are also really good abilities. You can reduce your range attack spread, which makes you more of a sniper, which is really helpful on the bolt staff, or you can increase your attack speed if you want to be in the front lines more with your melee weapon. But I'm going with this one. On the level 10, we have reduce damage by 50% when disabled, so that's when you're hooked by a hook rat, or pounced by a gutter runner, or any of the other crowd controls like leech. You're going to take less damage when you're crowd controlled. It's a nice safe talent, but honestly I feel as though at a higher level of play, you're not going to be needing this. Your other two options are both very good. There's the Quickening, which I do highly recommend if you don't plan on going for Grimoires, because obviously you need to use this for Grimoires. This is a very good option because it allows you to cast more frequently, especially charge abilities like the Fireball charge or the bolts like Lightning Snipe. It's really good, and Quickening is going to work well with that. Don't take this with the Beam Staff, though, because you've already got instant cast on both of your abilities, so that's dumb. Dissipate is what I go with because I plan on getting a Grimoire every level, and increase overcharge decay speed by 100% is amazing. So, as long as I have a Grimoire, or someone on my team has a Grimoire, I am going to be casting significantly more with this talent, and this is the talent for me and my build. At level 15, we have these three options. We've got the shield, which reduces the stamina cost so you can block more if you've been using your ability. This is a really good defensive ability when you're a caster, so I also recommend this. So if you've been casting and you've got a lot of overcharge and you can't cast anymore, otherwise you're going to explode, you're going to want to take this if this is a problem you run into a lot. Here I've chosen the Equilibrium because it reduces the overcharge by 5% per each stack, which is, you know, I will be casting until the very last second because of Blazing Equilibrium. I will be casting so close to exploding that I'm going to live my life in the red. And that's how I like to do it, because I'm going to be casting until the very last second. The other option here is increased attack speed. So once you've cast everything and you're full in the red and you're about to explode, you can go and chop at stuff with your ability as fast as your melee weapon as fast as possible with this ability. Also good. Actually, I find all three of these to be really, really good and viable talents, fine choices. I like to do this because I just want to be casting all the time. That's how I play. Seething Embers. Here at the level 20 talent, there's basically, in my opinion, these two are the options. You can either go for the critical hits, grant temporary health. I'll often do this when I have a bolt staff because I might get more critical hits. Or you can do kills, grant temporary health. I do this one more often with the beam staff because of the shotgun blast. I switch between these often depending on what staff. They're both viable. I often find that the kills, the soul snare, granting temporary health, work better for me, depending on which staff, because when you're clearing through large waves of enemies, that's usually when I end up getting pot shot in the back by like a rat. And so if I have a huge shield of temporary health, it doesn't really affect me. Whereas this one, I find helps me more often during boss fights. At the 25 talent, there's Burning Head removes all overcharge, which is really good. So say you're about to, explode, and you can just cast out that fireball, and then you're going to start over your cast cycle again. That might be the best talent. All of these are actually really good. This is a little tricky here, the Bonded Flame. It says it restores 10 health when used. That is temporary health. It does not indicate that it is temporary health. It is temporary health. This also works fine for keeping up that... you can build like a large shield of temporary health with these two talents and just keep casting your Burning Head to make sure that that refreshes so you don't lose your temporary health. So it is a really good talent. I personally go with the cooldown reduction of Burning Head so that I can be firing out my fireball as often as possible. It's a really effective part of my DPS, and I like casting it as often as possible. If I wasn't going to run this, I would probably run this so I could be casting other things as often as possible. And so that's my logic behind these talents. As I said, everything's subjective and depends on your playstyle. Go ahead and mess with them. Pick ones that work well with you. And next we're going to be moving on to weapons. When it comes to which weapon to use, there are 4 different melee weapons and 5 different staff types. My favorite, and which ones I think are the best, are the beam and the bolt, and I will show you how each one does in DPS. We'll start with the beam staff. The beam staff puts out a decent amount of damage, but really, that's not its claim to fame. It is actually a CC weapon. CC stands for crowd control. If you hit a special enemy like a gutter runner or a rattling gun or a warp fire thrower in the face, you'll do decent damage, but basically you're going to stun lock them. The second part of this weapon is its shotgun-like blast, which is really powerful and can stun lock both storm vermin and destroy multiple armies of smaller clan rats and slaves. Unfortunately, the dummy does not register its damage, so I'm going to show you some real-life examples. Next, we'll show off the bolt staff. This is, in my opinion, the best staff. It has very good single target DPS, and because it has a very, very high attack speed in a crowd, you can easily melt all of your enemies with it. Just because I prefer the beam staff and the bolt staff doesn't mean that the other 3 staffs don't have their merits as well. The conflagration staff does really fine single target DPS shooting a small fireball and has this really good AoE effect. It's like getting a firebomb on your right click, just no cost. It's really good. There's also the fireball staff, which once again has a single target high damaging fireball, and then you can use the alternate fire for a area of effect explosion, which can also be very fun and effective. And last but certainly not least, which is arguably one of my favorite staves as well, the reason I find it less viable for this build is because at higher levels such as champion and above, friendly fire is a thing with any ranged abilities or area of effect attacks. You will not be able to use this on legend difficulty, but if you are at a lower difficulty, feel free to bring out the Flamestorm staff, because boy can it be fun to roast a lot of rats. So I highly recommend checking them out and finding something that works good for you. And yeah, that's going to conclude your staff portion of the guide. For the melee section of this build, there are 4 weapons. I believe as though all 4 weapons are actually really fun and suit different playstyles well, and I think you should definitely try them out and check them out because they're good. However, My top two of these, and my top one, is going to be the regular sword, and then second place is going to be the fire sword. And I'll explain why. So, the sword offers a lot as far as speed and range. And my playstyle is that of a caster. I'm going to be in a backline, I don't want to be using my sword very often. So I really just use my sword to get me out of situations where there are lots of rats, which usually means I'm surrounded, in a swarm, or just in a bad place. So the reason I go with the sword is because it attacks quickly and has a wide range. The second option is going to be the fire sword because it also has a wide range and it attacks relatively quickly. Unfortunately, during this little charge up for the first charge attack, it feels slow and I end up getting hit more often than I do when I'm using the sword. That is why I place the fire sword in second, because I feel as though it is slightly slower. Or at least the charge attack is. And you're going to be primarily using the charge attack, as I said, because you're going to try and get yourself out of tight spaces with these. The other options are the mace, which has a wide swing, which is great, and fairly high DPS, single target DPS and widespread DPS, which makes it a really excellent weapon. But once again, it's just a little too slow for me, but that doesn't mean it's the wrong weapon. Now, the dagger is the fastest weapon, and it's really cool, actually. It has this single target explosion, as you can see, that does really good damage. But because its arc is so narrow compared to the other three weapons, it will not get you out of a tight spot if you are surrounded. And that's what really, unfortunately, takes it out of the running. So, I feel as though the best option is just your regular old sword. Give it a try, give it a swing, find out what works for you, but I'll be rocking this sword. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much for checking out this guide. If you liked what you saw, check out my channel, give it a thumbs up, and hit that subscribe button. If you want to see more guides, comment below and let me know. Thank you, everybody, and goodbye.